It's risky working for someone else. They can let you go today. You can spend 5 years building something. That's the risk. And that 90% of businesses failing is a lie, because it stops a lot of people even going any further.
Why is it that you're so passionate about walking up to strangers in the street and asking
what's your dream? What's your dream? What's your dream? What's your dream? Walking past strangers my whole life and not talking to them seems like a waste of the 35 years I wasn't doing it. It's really interesting talking to people. People should stop talking about how bad social media is, and they should get in the arena helping make it good.
What are two fundamental truths about building a business?
If you play Monopoly, which a lot of people have done in their lives, and all you do is you just go around collecting the payment and then go around again and collect the payment, and you don't play the game, you're not living the full experience. Everybody should, once in their life, experience starting a business. It may fail, but it's an experience. Money buys you time. That's the biggest value money brings. And if you don't use it to buy time, I think you're wasting money. And I don't need to work. And some days when I'm getting hit and getting hate, and I think, why am I doing this? I remember the reason I'm doing this. I'm helping that 15-year-old me that didn't have help, that the education system let down. No, I can't stop. It's not fixed yet.
How has your dream shifted over the last couple of years? Welcome to Chew the Fat. My name is Frank Grief, and I started this podcast after I sold a business for $180 million with my two brothers. It's part of my mission to raise $1 million for Children's Cancer Institute by writing a cookbook called Eat with Purpose. In this series, I'm going to bring different types of founders on for you can share in their journeys and their lessons and insights. I'm also going to bring on guests who are in the middle of scaling their business. I want to make sure the challenges are relative to you and make sure you can take insights that you can use in each and every day in your business. I hope you enjoy. So Simon, where I'd love to start for the audience, why is it that you're so passionate about walking up to strangers in the street and asking what their dream is?
Well, my ultimate goal is to fix the education system. So the street interviews that I do is just one part of how I attempt to do that. I think if you want to understand what's broken, you have to understand what's stopping people following their dreams. And so, and to be honest, when I first started doing it, I was just really doing a human survey, like what is stopping you following your dream? What is it? What is your dream and what's stopping you? And then I got addicted to it, to be honest. Walking past strangers my whole life and not talking to them seems like a waste of the 35 years I wasn't doing it, It's really interesting talking to people and finding out their story and not judging a book by its cover and understanding people's motivations and desires. And sometimes what's stopping them even having a dream. I got addicted to it is probably the short answer.
I love that. One of the things that definitely stood out to me is like as I was watching it, for all of the research, is definitely all the different shapes and sizes and the different types of people that you're talking to. There's no one type of individual. It's definitely an eclectic mixture of humans. I have to admit, Simon, like I was watching it yesterday, it was Sunday morning, and there was moments, a number of them, where like a tear started coming to my eye. And so I was really curious, like for yourself, like what has been the biggest impact or story that you've had from one of them that's made a change in your life?
So it's a fascinating journey. I mean, just talking to people listening, just having more conversations with people in general has really opened up my mind to the world at large and understand. It's given me more empathy. It's given me a good understanding of how the world works generally, and I can instantly list those things as wonderful personal benefits. I guess sometimes people look at my content and they could call it philanthropy, but it's actually not. I mean, I want to be useful and I want to be seen, and I think a lot of people want to be useful and want to be seen. So this is the way that I do it. It actually generally fills my bucket. I mean, some days I get tired, but generally the whole process fills my bucket. And so I think that each story has actually brought me something. I've probably done the largest human survey now in history, like asking people what their dreams, understanding what's stopping people. Every single interaction has given me another bit of knowledge, another understanding of humanity, another actually love for humanity generally, and another level of understanding of like what's wrong with our present system that's stopping people following their dreams. So there's no one person, I guess, I'd single out. I do find it quite fascinating that the people that watch the videos, often, millions of people are watching the videos. How many people take action after watching the videos? So it's
Mm.
not just the person in the video that we're trying to help. We showcase their dream. We give them support where we can as an organization, and we give them a platform on which to share their dream. But I think the thing that really has blown my mind is that thousands every single week, thousands of DMs, probably hundreds of thousands at this point, of people that have messaged us saying, I watched the video, I've been making excuses, I figured out my dream, and I'm doing it. And that's actually the bit that's blown me away, because I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, I can only imagine how many of those messages. There's like an analogy that's coming to my mind. It's like the idea of you can see a fruit tree, and you can see the fruit of the tree. They have those individual conversations, but then of course when those apples fall to the ground and they decay and they turn into seeds, those are the things you can't see, and all the other trees that get grown from that. It's really, really cool. Well, one of the things, as I was digging into your story, I noticed you've made a decision to homeschool your son. Why did you decide to do that?
So this is a really interesting subject, a very detailed one potentially. I think if I believe, which I do, the education system is broken and it's not serving people properly. If it ever has, although maybe at a certain point in history, the present education system was a good version one. In startup world, we have MVPs, right? And then minimum viable products, and then we build on top and make it better. And I'm sure at one point the education system was a good MVP, but I feel like it hasn't evolved. So if I believe that the education system today is broken, I'd probably be a hypocrite putting my kid then into school.
Fair.
Now, having said that, sometimes the school system is a very convenient way of dealing with it all, right? I mean, I genuinely think that the education system should be better described as a glamorized version of daycare. It's impossible for a teacher who's having 32 kids in a classroom to understand every child's needs and give them personalized education, which is what, frankly, humans need. And so I think, my first step in fixing the education system is build a platform where the education options, the other things you need to learn, like financial literacy and business, these things I think help you have a better life, even if you get a job, is something I can build. So I built that. And then my son was actually initially in nursery. And then when he hit 5, the nursery literally started getting quite serious. They weren't going outside as much, and they weren't having as much fun, frankly. They were sitting down in the classroom, starting to follow the school curriculum. And I just saw his love of learning drop. And I saw him literally in the car, not wanting to get out of the car, not wanting to go to that classroom. And so I thought, this isn't right. Like he's just 5. He should be enjoying the process. So,
100%.
I basically decided with my wife that we would home educate. Now, home education isn't what people think. Home education isn't me sitting at home or my wife sitting at home educating our child all day. The basic principle of home education is, first of all, community led. So it's a group of people helping each other to educate our
Interesting.
children. I can actually financially afford, of course, you could argue, home educate, because my wife doesn't need to work. She does work, but she doesn't need to work. So I'm in that privileged position. But this isn't a privileged option. This isn't just for the privileged few. In fact, home education, of course, was the original default before school became the mainframe. A bit like organic food was normal until we made all
Yeah,
this
yeah.
highly processed food. Now organic has become this special, expensive thing.
Totally.
Right. So school is the same. School is actually originally community driven. You have tribes, and in that tribe, you've got a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 14-year-old. And in a way, they regulate each other and they learn from each other. And
Mm.
so it's actually unnatural to have all the same age in a classroom all day, every day for a year. It's not natural for humans to operate that way. And that's why you get bullying and you get competitive pressures and stuff like that.
Mm.
So in long story short, I decided to home educate my son, and it's been a complete education for me. So first of all, it's community driven. The second element
Mm.
that's really fascinating for me is it's child-led learning. So you understand what the child likes to learn, and then you apply the tools around you to give them that learning. So for example, my son loves history, right? And he happens to really love sword fighting. Now, that sword fighting experience, we are able to go to a homeschooling group, where they basically do sword fight all day. That's
That's
kind
so
of that
cool.
homeschool does that. Now that gives him exercise, that gives him engagement with other kids. That also gives him questions. Why does this sword by Henry VIII? Why was it so expensive? How did Henry VIII get this sword? And then you understand money, trade, history, all from your interest. So instead of sitting him down and telling him he has to learn about history,
I don't want to be that guy, but like, come on, please buy it. Eat with Purpose Cookbook. Eatwithpurpose.net. Come on, man.
you start from his hobby, in this case, sword fighting, and you reverse engineer it because people will learn naturally and happily around something they're interested in. If you're not a fisherman and you force someone to learn fishing, it's going to be very hard. But you go to a fisherman and start talking about fishing, they're going to love it. So it's basically about making sure that you educate based on interests, and then the education system gets built around their interests, and that's basically what home education is. The best way for me to describe it.
You know what I love about that, Simon, is I was in the car with my brother today. We're driving. It wasn't even in relation to this conversation. We're driving, talking about homeschooling. I've definitely learnt something there. That's very cool. So I'm reflecting on my 3-year-old son. He would absolutely love to do some sword fighting. So I can imagine your son just enjoying the shit out of that.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. And I think people don't know about it, and they should. I really want people to know about this.
and so how do you so I take your views, which are very strong around the education system, and then starting with your home. How do you broadly scale that out? So, I can see you clearly want to make an impact on the education system. How do you take that and then extrapolate it out to be able to have that broader societal impact?
So when I initially thought about, okay, how can I fix the education system was in my mind. How can I do it? And so my mind initially naively turns to, well, maybe I need to become the education minister or get involved in the UN and, try to create policy from inside the political system, right? So that was my initial instinct. So I did a lot of research, even hired a consultant to potentially be, an elected MP. How would it work? And I soon discovered that the whole political system is just you lie to the public to get elected, basically. You figure out what the public is believing right now, and then you vote. You say that so you can get voted. So Brexit in England, for example, if you say Brexit in England is great, you've got a base, and you're likely to get elected. If you mention that you think it's a bad idea, then you lose a whole slew of voters just on that one belief system. So I couldn't lie. I realized I couldn't go into politics. And also then when talking to some of the higher up ministers, even the education minister in some respects doesn't have the power to change a lot of what's going on with the education system. So I thought, okay, maybe to fix a fire in a house, you put the fire out from outside the house, not inside the house. So that's when I started thinking about, right, okay, so what could I do as alternative to the education system? And interestingly enough, and it might shock people, but I actually thought to myself, well, where are kids learning now? Where are they going when they're not at school and forced to learn? Where are kids going to learn stuff? And the truth is, they're going on TikTok. They're going on YouTube, and people might not like it, but it's the truth. And so, why not go where people are learning instead of try to get in the classroom where they're forced to learn? Why not go where kids are naturally learning and start putting out content that's going to be useful to those people? So, I guess a lot of people think TikTok's bad. I don't. But like anything, TikTok is just a fridge. And what you put in that fridge means the fridge is bad or the fridge is good, right? What you eat out of that fridge. And I think that's the same with social media. If you put good content into social media and you encourage people to follow that good content, suddenly TikTok's good. And so I think, my job is partly to put good content in there that helps people have a better day, have a better life. And so that's where I started doing, and it just blew up. I think because I was probably the only mature person on TikTok 5 years ago. And I was certainly one of the few business people that had actually done something. I've actually built a company with no money from scratch. And so, I was probably one of the first people on TikTok that wasn't selling some course or some fake promise, right? So I think it really worked. And I just scaled it up from there. Since then, I built a massive education YouTube channel. I put out loads of videos generally about how to build businesses. I've managed to rope in the likes of Sir Richard Branson and brilliant people like that to share their business knowledge for free. And we've managed to build what I consider probably better than an actual school from a education point of view, because you go and watch it when you want to watch it. The Netflix model. You can go get the education that you want when you want it. And so that's how it started. And presently, it's pretty exciting because we're looking at doing a TV show. We're looking at like expanding to doing a group events where people can come together and share their learnings. And I do think we built an alternative to the education system at this present time.
That's awesome. One of the things I was reflecting on as I was kind of hearing your views and opinions towards the education system is I recently had an email from a 13-year-old, right? And I that never happens. And I got an email and he said, "Hey, Frank, I want you to be my mentor. I think the education system's broken. None of the kids my age, 11 to 18, are able to actually ingest the knowledge. They're not really learning what they want to learn. And I want to create an online platform that actually educates the right things, but also in the right way." And it's so interesting because, to your point around the TikTok piece is, at first I was just like blown away because I was like, when I sat down, him and his mum came over, I did the mentoring. I do it every few weeks now. And I was just kind of like blown away. And I realized, well, the reason he has a lot of these worldviews is because of content. And because, we hear so many times about how negative social media is and things like that, which it absolutely can be. But when it's pointed in that right direction, it can have such a positive impact when you're consuming the right information.
Agreed. And I think people should stop talking about how bad social media is, and they should get in the arena helping make it good. And so, I put out 2 videos a day trying to educate people on all the channels, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube, in the hope that that content brings value to the world and those individuals. And it can change lives. It can give
100%.
people a spark. It can give people a complete different change of direction. And we are fighting against a lot of bad stuff that's on social media, a lot of negative stuff. So I feel like it's my duty to make sure there's good content on the system for young people to consume.
And so let's fast forward a few years for, those later stages, the different type of education system, which is now the universities and the colleges. For the young person who's listening, what do you think is a better thing to do? Is it to, I assume you're not going to say go to college, but let's say you want to learn the art of business or marketing or something like that. Is it better to go and just start a business and learn through the process? Or is it better to go and, join a startup and learn, from someone else doing it?
It's very hard to be generalized when it comes to a question like this. So what should young people do if they're not sure about going to college or university? Because I think there is a place for university if you want to be a doctor, or frankly, if you want to be a lawyer. Unfortunately, the system now, you cannot do those things unless you go to university. So you've got no choice but to go to university. So for those certain jobs, you've got no choice. And I think if you want to be your own boss, if you want to start a business, then I think that university is a waste of time. And the thing I would say generally is that you've got those 4 years to take risk. And so going to university isn't much of a risk. It's kind of a safe path, although I think it has its downfalls later. It's not as safe as you think later, but you have a sunken cost, you get trapped by it later. But in the short term, you've got those early years of your life where in theory you can live fairly cheaply compared to, when you have kids and later in life, you can live quite cheaply and you can go anywhere if you think mobile in your mind, if you've got a passport. And so I always think first step is what are your interests? And second is, where are those opportunities around those interests? So, for example, if you like acting, the truth is you should probably be in LA, or you should learn AI, or you should go on TikTok and act every day. I think if you certainly then, back to your point there about someone asking you to be a mentor, along the way, people ask me all the time to be a mentor too. I think asking people to be your mentor is the wrong question. You shouldn't ask people to be your mentor. It's amazing to me that you said yes, but when you think about it, when you actually think about it, people that are actually, really good at what they do, if they've got time for mentoring, I'm surprised. So the better thing to do is ask a question. This is why I built HelpBank.com, by the way. I think actually, if you're an actor and you want to become an actor, then the best thing to do is ask a question of someone that became an actor who was in a similar background or story to you. If you go to them and ask them to be your mentor, they're probably on set filming a movie They haven't got hours, maybe weeks to spend with you. They just haven't. But if you can
Mm,
think of the questions that you need to ask them to then get the knowledge you need to go and do what you want to do, they're more likely to be able to answer a question. If you ask me a question, I can answer it. If you ask me to be your mentor, I don't know what that means. And
mm.
actually, I don't have time, and I don't have the resources to sit for hours. Probably the first meeting you had with that young man was probably a couple of hours, right? Where you got to get to
Yeah,
know them,
yeah.
understand their backstory. Before you can give good advice, you've got to
Mm,
know them. Otherwise, you're just going to give your knowledge, which might not even be relevant to their background, right, and their story. So, so I don't think people should ask for a mentor. I think they should ask a question
mm,
of people they want them to be mentored by, and or go get the knowledge from the people you respect. So, for example, on
mm.
my YouTube channel, it's all there for free. You don't even need to buy my book. You could just go on my YouTube channel, and my knowledge is all there for free. If you want to buy my book, you can, but you don't need to. Like, you don't need to spend a single
Mm,
penny, dollar, nothing. You can just go to the people you like and you think have alignment with what you're trying to do, and you can go and watch their content for free. Why wouldn't you do that? Now, I meet so many people that want to be me to be their mentor. First
mm,
question I ask them is, have you watched my video on YouTube, 2 hours and 26 minutes, that gives all the business knowledge that I have? And most of them say no.
mm.
I'm like, you can go and spend 2 hours and 26 minutes with me right now for free. You don't even need to ask my permission.
It's so true. I'm like, I was like struck for a little bit because I'm like, it's so, and I think part of the challenge is sometimes, it's almost like it's like the easy route. You know what I mean? Now, I'm very cautious of handing it out. I was mostly just like flabbergasted that a 13-year-old wanted to make an impact like he did. But it's very, very true. You mentioned there, your HelpBank app is an app. It's online. Like, talk to us about the HelpBank.
Well, I think one of the things I realized when I started this journey was that I cannot help everybody. I just can't. I don't have the capacity to help
Mm,
hundreds of thousands of people every week, which is what's needed.
mm,
So there has to be a system where people can go and get help. So I built a platform called HelpBank, and I actually thought the problem with the platform, you press a button and you can ask for help, because it's quite hard to ask for help.
mm.
And you press a button and you can give help, which everyone today could take 5 minutes out. Every single one of your listeners could take 5 minutes today and help someone answer a question. Not spend hours with them mentoring them,
Mm,
but answer a question that you know the answer to, that person's struggling to find the answer to, that can help them in their dream, right? So we built the platform. What was really fascinating when we launched the platform, we thought initially the problem with the idea was going to be getting people on there to help. We
mm,
thought getting talented people, busy people, to go on there and help was going to be the challenge. And it was to an extent, but it wasn't that bad. Actually, a lot of people go there to try and help. The thing that was interesting is people asking for help. People are scared to ask for help. In fact,
interesting.
someone once told me recently that they would. One guy I know said he'd rather almost consider killing himself than get the help he needed.
Wow.
Like, that's how bad it was. He'd rather just end it all than admit that he's a failure, or he's having problems, or he's struggling, or he needs help. That's how bad it is for some people to have to ask for help. So that's why I say the strongest people ask for help. But the platform
Mm,
is there to, make it easy for people to ask for help, to make it feel, perfectly normal to ask for help. It should be perfectly normal to ask for help. It shouldn't be a sign of failure. It shouldn't be a bad thing. It should be, I'm struggling. I know for sure any of my friends, anybody listening to this, if they're struggling, I'd rather they reached out and asked for help than just gave up. So
mm,
that's why we built the platform, to give people a place to go and ask for help, and a place where people that want to help, because I think humanity is good. Despite what we read in the media, I think humanity is good. Give people a place to go and help when it's convenient to them. We made it convenient for the
mm.
person who wants to help, and that's important.
Love that. You certainly have a few things going on, right? Because you've simultaneously recently released the What's Your Dream book. What was your goal behind that book?
Well, I guess I wanted to remind people everywhere they went that they should be thinking about their dreams.
Mm,
So I've got a lot of products coming as well, which I'm quite excited about, which, I want people to walk into a supermarket and be reminded that they should be going for their dreams. I
mm,
wanted people to walk into a bookshop and realize I should be thinking about my dream. I think writing a book was another way of me also educating. The thing I don't like about a book is that I have to charge for it because you have to print
Mm,
the book. You have bookshops need to earn money so they can pay their staff and pay the electricity. So there's a big part of that, the book part, which I think is so amazing because you can go really deep on subjects. Like in the book, I go quite deep on subconscious belief systems and how we stop ourselves following our dreams, and our brain stops us following through self-sabotage. And so I get to go deep on that, which I think is quite hard to do in a YouTube video because people's attention
mm,
spans and distractions with all the options on the left-hand side of the bar, the YouTube video always popping up, telling you to watch something else. So a book is a more intimate moment. And so
mm,
I get to spend 9 hours with people if they read the book, where I get to go deep on subjects. So that was the reason for writing the book. I say that I struggle sometimes with the fact that I have to charge for it because I
mm,
really want to provide a free education model to people to compete with the broken system.
mm,
So, but yeah, it's for me. It was also I'm dyslexic. I was told at 14 years old I was stupid. So to release a book, it become a #1 bestseller is and was a pretty proud moment for me as well. Like personal goals alongside, the big idea of fixing the education system. So yeah, and I do love the book. I'm actually writing a second right now, and I think it's helped a lot of people, especially when it
mm.
comes to like reviewing their subconscious beliefs around they shouldn't start a business or they can't follow their dreams.
How do you find the process of writing a book? Is that quite challenging for you? Because I'll share from my sense. I've written one. I'll talk a little bit later. But for me, there's moments there. It's like pulling teeth. How did you go about like the actual process?
Yeah, I mean, the first time I've done it, so I went in a bit naive. The second book, I know what I'm doing, and it's even more scary because you know how much
Mm,
work's involved. I think I basically voice clip chapters. So I
nice,
voice clip the frame of the chapter, and then I hired someone to actually type it out for me and
nice.
fix little pieces to get it sounding right. And so I found it to be a good process. I mean, I guess there's the barrier is like marketing the book is an intense
Mm,
exercise, and then will people like it? Like my heart breaks every time I see a bad review on Amazon,
yeah.
and so luckily I don't have too many, but every time I read one, someone said the other day that the Amazon mucked up the delivery or something, and I got a 1 star. I'm like, no, it's got nothing to do with the book.
Oh,
Please don't put a 1 star. Now I'm a 4.6 average instead of 5 because Amazon didn't deliver the book to you. But there are some criticisms of the book, and that
mm,
does break my heart. And so, but it also, I'm glad I pushed through that fear of being judged, of being, disliked, and just putting it out there and trying, even if you get judged for it. But pushing through the judgment, I still find
mm,
hard. But
mm.
I'm glad I.
There's like a little, almost like a tax of being a founder of a business or a creator of something like a book, which I think not many people realize. That feeling of you launch a business, you put your heart and soul into this thing, and then you get a customer complaint or a bad review, and people like forgetting for that moment that you're like a human on the other side, and you read it and like I know the feeling so well of your heart just like breaking over, even though it's like our confirmation bias. There's thousands of positives, and then there's that one negative, and it just like sits on your soul for a little bit too long.
Yeah, it's something I've learned to manage. I'm still learning to manage. I find hate and criticism
Mm,
really hard, and
mm,
so I'm always shocked how many people um, don't like me. And I still learn. I'm learning to deal with that with a big social media following. It's just part of the parcel of it all. But I do when I basically my whole life really built service companies. So my first business was a gardening company. That's heavily like client is happy, client is not happy, right? So I've been sensitive to that from 15 when I started that gardening company. I built a creative agency working with brands like CNN. Like, are they happy? Are they happy? And I have it now. Like when I honestly I have a kind of a depression when someone criticizes my service. And
mm.
and there's two things that happen to me. One is that kind of like I'm trying my best. Please don't hate me.
Yeah.
Uh, and the other side is like, right, what can I do to improve it? What
Mm,
have they got a point? What have I done wrong? What could I do better? You know, and so and they probably go hand in hand. I probably swing between the two, depending on what the complaint is. But I mean, I have given money out to people. I have given promoted people for free. I have introduced them to my network on platforms like Helpbank, and people still complain to me that I haven't done enough. And so my brain short circuits are like, what, other than actually run the business for you, what can I do? What can I do? I can't run it for you. I can just give you this, community I built that cost me money to maintain. I can give you free marketing on my platform that cost me money to maintain. I can give you cash, which I do, but it's still not enough sometimes. And I get it. What else can I do? And that both short circuits me when someone complains I'm not doing enough, but also makes me think, right, what can I do? What can I do more? What should I be doing more?
I have an interesting one that popped up right while I was looking through all your stuff, and there was this post that you mentioned about it's essentially Tim Cook from Apple gives Trump a 24-carat gold gift, and in the title of your description it says Apple is evil. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I actually have an Apple phone. I'm talking on a Apple laptop, and I am part of their ecosystem. Right, the product is not the best product in the world. It's a beautiful product, but we all know its battery dies halfway through the day, and so we're tied into an ecosystem, right? We have to use. I have to use Apple because everything else I use is linked to Apple, right? So, I think what I've noticed over the years with big companies is they have the power to do so much good, but they weren't born to do good. So, and I used to have a lot of respect for Apple, and that one day I pitched to them an idea, which was, how about people are going to spend what 1,500 maybe on a laptop, $5,000 plus on your product. So people have got a bit of money to spend on this product. What if when you load up the laptop, you just say, look, would you mind donating $5 to a charity? Download the app, one of them, whichever charity suits you. Just donate $5. Help a charity out. Giving it makes you feel good. Helping other people. Like a little positive message, and and they could even give $5 off their laptop to do it if it's really. But some sort of chain of kindness. Like so. And I pitched the idea to Apple as a PR marketing idea, and they actually considered it. And then they came back to me and said, no, we're not going to do it, with no explanation why. And I just slowly realized that these companies, the way they're built, it's just to make money. And I think we're past that. This isn't the 80s anymore. And we know our problems and we see how we could fix them. And I think corporations have a responsibility to step up and do that. And so Apple in particular, billions of dollars sitting in a bank account that could, help the homeless. Products that could be turned into devices that did so much more good. And so, in fairness, I don't think Apple is evil, but I also don't think they're good. So, I put a hook in there, Apple is evil. That's the social media hook. And I think we can all understand how social media, don't hate the player, hate the game, right? It is a hook. But I do think, they could do more good. I think a lot of big companies should not be thinking about how to make Donald Trump happy. They should be thinking about how to help people with their businesses. Not for profit, for good, I think is the future of business. And so I see how much I can do with the little platform that I've got, the YouTube revenue, the social media revenue. We can fund people's dreams, and we have. And it's really exciting. You fund one dream today, who knows what effect that can have 20 years from now. It could solve cancer, that one seed planted, right? So, and I'm just a small fish compared to someone like Apple. And so imagine if they just turned their attention to not just making more money, but figuring out how they could use their products to fix some of the world's biggest problems. And they're not doing that, which I think is an opportunity for other people. I think there's an opportunity compete with Google because you can build a product that actually does something good with its $4 billion of profit a quarter, and it's not just about making shareholders richer. I think there's all sorts of opportunities if you think this way, and that's my main issue with brands like Apple.
The concept of for profit for good is really interesting. Like I have someone in my network who's built an incredible business. Like he's built a business that makes lots and lots of profits. And that business, like his entire ecosystem is about how does he use that business for good? And I'll give you a really simple example. One of the items in his business is actually quite simply just importing cheese from Saudi Arabia and selling them in Australia. Now, the person listening might be like, Frank, how does that help anybody? His decision was all of the workers who pack the cheese, 70% of them have a disability, but he pays them full market wage. And so even though the product itself isn't, by definition, cheese isn't good, but something in the supply chain is making an impact or making some kind of difference. And I think it's a really interesting space. Do you mind if I share with you, Simon, why I started this podcast?
Please do.
So I a little bit about my backstory. Built a business with my two brothers over 10 years. We sold it to a publicly listed company here in Australia for 180 mil about 3 years ago. And post exit, I went through. I don't know if you've gone through this, but the post exit identity crisis, which is I've been focusing on this business for so long. What am I going to do after?
It happened to me, yeah.
And so my decision was, well, the way my kind of DNA, the way I'm wired as an entrepreneur is I'm going to go and build the next business. But I challenged myself to go, okay, instead of doing that straight away, do something that's beyond yourself. And so what I actually did, I'll just share with you here. So I wrote a cookbook, and the cookbook's called Eat with Purpose. I used to be a chef. And so the reason I started the podcast is because I wanted to create like awareness. So 100% of the revenue actually goes to Children's Cancer Institute. And so I wrote the cookbook. I paid for the funding, paid for the marketing, all of that. But I did this as a way to, one, make some kind of impact through the selling of the books, but two, through the task, I guess, of being able to inspire others through the journey. So I love your lens of the world around, profit for purpose, because I think it's really interesting when you can connect the dots, right? Like connect the ability. Now, this cookbook isn't for profits, but from a business sense, if you can connect the ability to make profits and have an impact and a purpose, that's like the very magical sweet spot.
I also think it gives you a competitive advantage. I think it's, a lot of companies pretend to care, but if you build a company that actually does from day one, so, I just think it also, in this day and age, a lot of people are a bit down on young people, calling them lazy and stuff like that. It's not true. They're not lazy at all. I have 42 people working with me on this platform. Pretty much all of them except one is under 30. I have never seen such a hardworking, focused, educated from a self-educated point of view group of people ever in my life. And I built 19 companies, so I've seen a lot of things. This new generation, they are so driven, but there is a secret to it. They want to have a purpose. It cannot be just about making money. Money is definitely important, but it's not the driving force. People want to feel like they're making a difference. They're fixing the problems that probably my generation have caused. And so, that's another, superpower to having a purpose behind your business. People want to work for you if you do, but it's got to be genuine. People might listen to this and say, if it's not genuine, people snip it out quite quick and you can't sustain it. So, I've been trying to fix the education system for 5 years. If this was a lie, I would have given up a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, easily. You can't keep going if it's fake. So people should be careful not to fake it. But if it's genuine, I would say the education system, the nub of the education system that needs to change is we ask kids, what will you be when you grow up? And that's the biggest mistake ever. The question that we should ask is not what will you be, because that traps your mind into a particular job, a particular conveyor belt. At 5 years old, 6 years old, kids are getting asked this. They're like, oh, I'm going to be a lawyer. Now you've got to follow a certain treadmill, and then you've got to live up to that thing you said when you were 6. Right? But instead, we should be asking kids, what problem do you want to solve when you grow up? Because now you can have 9, 10 different careers, and that problem, you can solve it. AI comes along, great. AI can help you solve it. It's not disrupting you as a doctor or a lawyer, right? So I think we need to change the question in the education system to what problem do you want to solve when you grow up? And if we do that, the exciting thing is, in my opinion, the whole shift moves towards right, we're building a business to solve this problem instead of we're building this business just to make money. But I think the charity model is broken. So I speak to so many charities. One of my kind of side missions is to try and help charities build income models, because it makes it so tough for them to survive when the economy goes up and down, and people one month can donate and the next month they can't. So, it's not sustainable. Charity models are generally, in distress. So I want to teach people business who run good I want all the benefits of a charity model. In other words, a purpose-driven reason to be there, alongside all the upsides of a very profitable business. Like, my business is very profitable. And that allows me to bring good people in to help people. That allows me to build platforms like HelpBank. That allows me to dish out cash without expecting anything back from people. And I wouldn't be able to do that so easily if I was a charity structure.
Let's shift to business for a bit. I think there's definitely a rhetoric, right? Which is obviously business is very hard, but the rhetoric is 90% of businesses fail in the first 5 years, or whatever the horrific stat is.
Not to.
And I know many.
That's a lie.
Yeah,
No,
and I know
it's very important we highlight it as a lie.
100%. That's where I'm going to get.
Literally, I was sitting with Simon Sinek. You know him?
Yes. Yep.
One of the greatest thinkers of our time, in my opinion. And he said it. 90% of businesses fail. No, it's not true. Of course, eventually 100% of all businesses will fail. Of course. Stats are very, very easily manipulated. Okay, so in the UK, for example, 23% of businesses fail in the first year. 64% of businesses fail in the first 3 years. Okay, but I was part of both of these stats. In the first year, my gardening company failed when the winter arrived, but I made a lot of money before the company failed. I had 8 months of a successful business, and then it failed. So I made a lot of money, and then it failed. Important, the stats don't tell you this. The second thing is, I learned a lot in that process. So when I did my next business, it survived 3 years before it failed, but I made a lot of money until it failed. And I had a lot of learning in that time, which in the third business, when I launched it, it didn't fail. Today, even now, it hasn't failed, right? So I think that it's important that people know that 90% of businesses failing thing is a lie, and a scary lie, because it stops a lot of people even going any further. If people hear that, like, 90% of businesses fail in the first year, well, it's risky doing a business, isn't it? It's risky working for someone else. It's risky working for someone else. They can let you go today. You can spend 5 years building something, and they can let you go today. That's the risk, right? If you don't own equity in that company, you will have nothing, and you have to start again. New boss, new journey, no equity. That's the real risk. And I think this 90% of businesses fail. Sorry to go on about it, but when people say, I've always got, even Simon Sinek, who I really respect, I had to stop and say, hold on a minute, No, we got to be careful that doesn't get out there accidentally is true.
And that was, where I was going to go is, what are the stats missing? And so I love that you've done that, because I get this question a lot, right? And I think about it for myself. Your point there around the learnings, I think, is really key. The measurement that we don't have that I think is really interesting, business is like a moment in time. So as you just alluded to there in that journey, there was 2 or 3 businesses. But what we're not tracking is you, Simon Squibb, and your journey. We're tracking those like individual, you've set up an entity, you've closed down an entity. And so what I think is more helpful, even though we don't track it, is like tracking the people who, if they start a business and stay in the game of business, rather than which vehicle they choose to go with, how many of those people fail? And if you looked at over from a 5 to 10 year period and you followed the founder rather than the business entities, what would that stat look like? Because I believe wholeheartedly what you're saying.
And I think it's a bit like, I went to Bhutan, and Bhutan measure success by national, not GDP, by gross national happiness. Right, so they measure their success not by how much money the country makes, but by how happy their people are. I think, like, if I was doing that survey, I'd love to understand. I think the journey is so fulfilling, and so this thing I saw the other day, which I really like, is like a Monopoly board. If you play Monopoly, which a lot of people have done in their lives, and all you do is you just go around collecting the payment, and then go around again and collect the payment, go around again and collect the payment, and you don't play the game, you're not living the full experience, right? And I'm not a fan of property. And in fact, monopoly was invented to highlight the problems with property as a business. But conceptually, we got this kind of game we're playing. And why wouldn't you want to have all these crazy experiences? Like, I never wanted to be an influencer. I never wanted to be famous. It's kind of an interesting experience, though. It's got its pros and cons, like all experiences. But I'm like, wow, I'm so lucky to have this experience. And so, it's kind of interesting. I think that's what life is. It's just one big group of experiences. And so I think everybody should, once in their life, experience starting a business. It may fail, but it's an experience, and so I also think people should spend time on things that are scalable. It's just common sense. Selling time is not scalable. If you are, the teacher teaching you is selling time. They don't know, right? So, if you sell a certain amount of hours every week, then you're always going to be tied to those hours. And that's not how you scale. So if we did do a survey, I'd like to understand how much of people's lives are enjoyable, right? Like, if you're doing a job where you love, that's what matters. It matters. I think it matters more than how much you make. Of course, you need a basic amount to have a decent life, a place to sleep, good food, be able to travel. I think is important. Those things, if basic, hopefully basic things should be basic things. Of course, they're not basic things for everybody, but they should be. And so I think after that, a certain amount of money, I think surveys have been done. More money doesn't make you happy. I think money buys you time. That's the biggest value money brings. And if you don't use it to buy time, I think you're wasting money.
Love that. And with all the knowledge that you have in business and the number of years you've done it, what are two fundamental truths about building a business?
Two fundamental truths about building a business. The journey matters more than the destination. I think we're so taught in our lives that, retirement, let's get to retirement. Destination is the key. No, the journey. So I think it's true in life, it's true in business. The journey, the experience, the people you meet along the way, the relationships you build, the bonds, the camaraderie. And then I think the second element is, I think, tap into what matters to you. I've invested in 83 companies, and the people that I've invested in haven't pitched me businesses that are necessarily going to be billion-dollar companies, although I invested in Lovable, which has become a billion-dollar company.
Oh, well done.
I think it's not about that. It's about, the founder, Anton, who built Lovable. He wanted to give a platform to people that allow people's dreams to become reality. You have an idea, an app idea, you voice it, and it gets built. Why are we all struggling to find a tech person to build our dream for us? It wasn't based in like, I want to build a company that's worth $1 billion. It wasn't based in that. Don't get me wrong, that can bring money that allows you to hire talent to follow through on the mission. But that's not the purpose. I think, again, like, build something or be involved in something where the actual mission matters to you. And then that will drive you. That's why I get so annoyed when I see, a lot of fake course selling rubbish where it tells people to do a certain thing. Like, I know a lot of people, for example, have got into property and they're not happy. They overcharge. A nurse can't afford to rent. A nurse can't afford to buy. A nurse can't afford to get paid more. And the person who bought the house is renting to a nurse and trying to get maximum yield out of them. Right? It's not good. It's not rewarding. Everyone talks about property being the passive income model. And I just think, why do you want to be passive? You'll be passive when you're dead. Don't worry. Don't be passive, be active. Be involved in something. So, two fundamentals probably right there.
Love that. That's awesome. And of the, the different founders you've met, and you're like, what do you think the biggest unlock for success for those people that are growing a company is?
Well, I don't want to repeat myself. My instinct is to always to say the purpose of life is a life with purpose.
Mm.
The purpose of life is a life with purpose. So that's an unlock if you're a founder, if you have a purpose. Now, the purpose can be someone stole my car parking space and that was wrong. I'm going to build a car parking app that means that I can reserve it when I see it and then that person can't steal it from me. Right? That's fine. It can literally be like my mum is lonely during the day when I'm at work and I want to make sure she's not lonely. So I'm going to design a robot that gives her attention, or a pretend dog that gives her love, and then, oh, this dog, my mum really loves it. She's not so lonely during the day. Maybe I can make another dog for someone else. I just made that idea up. Business idea for free, folks. It's yours. You can take it. The point I'm making is like, solving a problem really motivates and keeps you going. And like, I don't need to work. And some days when I'm getting hit and getting hate and getting, told I'm awful for not doing enough, and I think about giving up, and I think, why am I doing this? I don't need to work. I could just be swimming in my swimming pool with my son and just hanging out. I remember the reason I'm doing this. I'm helping that 15-year-old me that didn't have help, that the education system let down. And so I'm like, no, I can't stop. It's not fixed yet. And so I do think about giving up quite often. But then this motivation, this purpose keeps me going. And I think that's what people need to give themselves so that they feel the same power that I do.
Amazing. You're coming over to Australia and New Zealand for a tour. What's the tour for?
Well, I have a lot of fans in Australia. I think on my system, 18% of my fan base is in Australia. And
no
I have
way.
not been there. I have not asked people in Australia directly what is their dream. And it seems like a lot of people in Australia have dreams. So it seems only right that I go there. And I'm going to do a whole series of events where, all the dreamers in a room. I think I'm going to every major city. And I just want to have a room full of dreamers, hear people's dreams, give advice on how to make it happen. And then I hope those dreamers help dreamers. And so that's my plan, just to bring, I think we've got 7 locations in total we're going to. Just bring all those dreamers together and in each city and say, right, you've all got a dream. This is how you can make it happen. Now help each other. Let's make it happen.
Will you be hitting the streets? Will you be hitting the streets for some street
I
interviews?
will be here in the street. I don't think I'm allowed to go to Australia and not hit the streets.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah,
love that.
we'll be there in October. The whole of October is the plan. And so, yeah. And I think there's somewhere in my bio, there is a sign up if people want to come along. But it will be fun. I love Australia. I almost moved there. So I feel a real strong connection to Australia. When I'm living in England, everyone thinks I'm Australian. And so it's in Hong Kong, people thought I was Australian. I don't know why. I'm English, but I do feel a real strong connection to Australia, and I'm excited about going there.
Awesome. And as we start to kind of wind down, Simon, I'm curious on 2 questions. How has your dream shifted over the last couple of years?
You broke up a little bit there, but I think I grasped it. Do you want to say it again, just so I definitely get it?
Yeah, no worries. I was saying, how has your dream shifted over the last couple of years?
So our purpose does change, but our dream generally doesn't. So my dream is actually that we move away from give and take to give without take. That we just help each other wherever we can. And I've done this my whole life. When I was 15 and I had nothing, I tried to help people even though I didn't have anything. And I always felt like I got something back. I didn't need to ask for it. And so actually, I'd love to move away from give and take, which has become our normal default. Like, I'll help you if you help me, to like, okay, how can I help someone today without expectation of anything back? But my purpose, I guess, to get there, to have that world, is right. Well, let's fix the education system so people have got more choice. Let's make sure everyone gets rich. Let's build a platform like Helpbank where people feel comfortable going somewhere and asking for help, and people have an easy way of helping. right? So they press a button, they can help, press a button, get help, right? And then let's build content from the world's most successful people for free for people to get access to that knowledge, right? So my purpose, these things I'm doing lead eventually to my ultimate dream, which is, of course, a new education option for people, updated education system, but linked to this whole idea that we're in it together, like we're just one big tribe on this round tribal globe. We're in it together. And how can we help each other? And so I think when I was younger, the thing is I didn't know my purpose. I didn't know my mission, and my purposes were harder to structure. But as I got older, I think what's changed in the last 5 years in particular is I have really leaned into what I believe to be true, instead of like being neutral or hearing lots of different viewpoints and accepting some of them. And I've leaned into what I believe, and I think that's been a big shift. So I believe the education system is broken, and I believe there's a way to fix it by building an alternative that eventually hopefully becomes the mainstream opportunity for people to learn. I believe that we as a human race are good, and that of course there are always bad and there are things that people do. I mean, I'm a good person. I've done bad things by accident, like no one's perfect. I think humans innately are good, and I want to tap into that by moving away from give and take to give without take. But I didn't realize that until the last 5 years, because I'm now, I have to. I don't know if you've ever been to a healthy juice shop and the person serving the healthy juice to you is not healthy. Right. So it's like, I think I have had to live this model of give without take for 5 years to almost prove that one, you can make money doing it. Two, that there is an impact on humanity. If I live this way, your life can be better. So what if you live this way, your life can be better? And I just looked at my sleep score on my Whoop today, and I've got an 81% sleep score. Pretty much every
Huge.
day I sleep generally quite well because I feel like I'm giving without taking. Now, I do have bad days. And sometimes when you give a lot, there are some people that take advantage of you, and they always tell you you could be giving more. And that does affect me. But I remember that I have given without any expectation of anything back, and that helps me sleep better. So I don't know if your listeners get what I mean, but like,
Mm-mm.
to answer your question, I really think that now I know this to be true. I think when I was younger, I didn't know it was true. I had a feeling. And as I've got older, I've realized that this whole model of like just helping someone without expectation of anything in return makes me happier. And it's not that I've got the money to do it. I could take 5 minutes and do it. If I was poor, I've still got 5 minutes spare to do it. When I was 15, I used to do it, but I couldn't do it as much because I was poor. But it did make me happy. If I saw someone struggling and I gave them £20 and helped them, it did make me feel good. And so even though I didn't have anything then, I tried to do it. But as I've got older, I've realized how important this idea is. And now I want everyone to know it, so that at least they can have that. If you do 20 minutes of meditation today to make yourself feel better, do 20 minutes of helping someone without expectation of anything in return, I think is more powerful.
Love that. I have a last question for you, Simon. If you take a moment to reflect on the journey you've been, what are you most proud of?
My 24-year relationship. I've been married a long time. I met my wife when I was young. I still love her so much. And I just feel like in a world where everything is disposable and, Tinder, swipe left, swipe right relationships are so easily tossed out the window. And I've worked hard at my relationship, so has my partner. And I love my wife, and I love my life. I love my son. I love being with my wife. I love the moral code of my wife. And I think my biggest accomplishment is actually a good relationship, a long-term, deep, honest, authentic relationship. And it's not talked about enough in this world of, as I say, commercialization. But, the deep relationship is so, so rewarding. I see myself, old, holding my wife's hand on a bench, looking out at the sea together, I don't know. It's my biggest accomplishment. And I think it's something I think people should strive for more. And it's so not an obvious thing to people, because you think, oh, I don't like my wife anymore, I'm getting a divorce. Well, work on it,
Mm.
man. The grass isn't greener on the other side. The grass is greener where you water the grass.
Mm. I absolutely love that you've ended there, Simon. That's so good. I have to admit, like through our conversation today and through the last couple of answers, I can't help but shake this feeling like the world's really lucky to have Simon Squibb. Like,
Thanks.
not only were you able to do what you've done in business, but then, already so few people have done that. But then post that, you've made it like clearly it takes up a lot of time and energy and effort to then put what you're doing into the world. You're one of very few, and I think on behalf of the internet and the world, thank you. You're an absolute legend and an awesome inspiration for the planet.
Thank you. Thanks for saying that. It means a lot. And actually, I had a bad day yesterday where I got a lot of hate. So it actually means a lot more than you realize. Because it is hard. It is hard. And I don't want to play the violin for myself. I think a lot of people have it a lot harder than me. But sticking at this thing where you are trying to help the world, people just judge you. They don't believe you. It's hard. And so it's nice to hear. And I'm going to say thank you I find it hard to take compliments. I'm English. But I'm going to take it. And, I needed it today. So thank you.
You're a good man. Thank you, Simon. I really appreciate you jumping on today.
Likewise, appreciate your time. And thank you for having me on your podcast.